Hello, and welcome to the Leave Life Love podcast. I'm your host, Veronica. This is a podcast where we talk about life after high demand religion. When we were deconstructing, there weren't a lot of resources about the crazy kind of Catholicism we found ourselves in. So we decided to be a resource for others in that place. We may have left the church, but we're still laughing and loving. No matter where you're at with your faith, we're so happy you are here today. Hello, everyone. Today, I will be talking solo about my favorite Marian apparition, the apparition of Our Lady at Garabandal. It's just me today. Evelyn has been traveling to help a friend who's had a baby, so huge shout out to the new mom. We hope everything's going well, obviously. So she's been out of town, so this has been my moment to finally sit down and give my signature rant about the apparitions of Our Lady at Garabandal. Before I jump into it, and before I explain to you Garabandal and why I'm interested so much in it, I would like to start with a quick disclaimer. Everything stated here is reflective of my own research and opinions. This is not meant to defame any person mentioned, harm reputations, or to sway public opinion about anything mentioned in today's episode. My only intent is to express my personal opinions, so please keep that in mind. Basically, this is my info dump. Watch at your own risk. That being said, to give a little bit of context on my personal interest in Garabandal, Garabandal is an apparition that happened in the 60s in Spain. Garabandal, Spain, as you might have guessed. Not that you've probably heard of Garabandal, but it is in Spain. Garabandal was an apparition of Our Lady to 4 teenage girls. I shouldn't even say that, 4 tween girls. They were 11 and 12, I believe. In, you guessed it, Garabandal, which is a tiny town in Spain which had at the time about 300 residents. Growing up, I grew up on the classics, Fatima, Lourdes, Guadalupe. I learned a bunch about various Marian apparitions and about mystics, like religious who had visions of Mary, saints, angels, Jesus. I used Seton homeschooling for a while, and some of their readers and religion books would have cute little stories about young Catholic children having saints or Mary appear to them on their front porch, and me thinking, oh my gosh, I just want the Lord or Mary or a saint to appear to me, but they probably won't because I'm already like into my faith or whatever, because I want it. I'm not like humble enough for that. But that was really heartbreaking for me as a child. The type of child who prayed often for the stigmata. If God is out there, he was really smart not giving the 11-year-old stigmata. Let me just say that, because that would have caused a lot of issues for my family, the church, etc., etc. You don't want allegations of physical abuse of a minor going on there. But moving on. By the time I got to college, I was learning more about like Medjugorje and some of the more recent 20th century, more niche Marian things that are not. I just think like Lourdes and Fatima and Guadalupe are all very widely accepted, and devotion to them is very widespread. You can find artwork devoted to them in your local parish church, whereas Our Lady of the Nations it's more niche. And so as I learned about Med, but I never knew quite exactly what to think about it. I knew that my grandparents had visited Med and they had a devotion. They actually have some photos of them visiting Medjugorje, I believe in the 80s. I could be wrong. Maybe it was before then. Standing in front of a window on a second story. So the window's on the second story of the house above the people posing in the photo. But you could pose underneath the window for a photo, and I guess the window looks into the room where Mary would appear, and the one photograph has a shadowy figure. It appears like maybe you can see what might be Our Lady in the photo. You have to go looking for it. It's not super obvious. It's one of those like mind trick or like optical illusions where it's hard to see it, but once you do, then it's hard to unsee it. Medjugorje isn't yet approved or anything by the church because the apparitions are still ongoing. They can't supposedly make any claims about it. So when I studied abroad, I visited at the beginning of my semester both Fatima and Knock in Ireland. Knock was just incidental because I was in Ireland nearby, and it's a quick day trip from Galway. And I think because I had visited those two Marian apparition sites, I didn't feel the need to go to Lourdes or to go to Medj when everyone else did. Shout out to my friend, though, who did bring me back a Medjugorje cross. Actually, I still keep it on my bookshelf. It's a little Medjugorje. It's like a replica, I think, of what's at Medj with the cross, Our Lady, some flowers, and real rocks from Medjugorje. I'll add this to my set for the day. Well, okay, it's just thing in front of me. My freshman year, I went to a talk by Dr. Mark Miravalli, who's also a deacon. He's a faculty member at Franciscan University, and he is very widely acclaimed as a Mariologist, as a very devout man, and as someone who fosters a lot of devotion in Our Lady. People would take his class and talk about how they fell in love with Mama Mary, and it was so good, and etc., whatever. But I wasn't super interested. I think part of that was due to hearing roundabout from people in the family that my grandfather, whose opinion obviously I very much respect, who had an STL, Sacred Theology licentiate, which is just one step down, practically a doctorate in theology. And it was in Mariology, and he had opinions that he was a little bit weird or something, which is fine, whatever. Or that he was too extreme. I should say that Dr. Miravalli took very extreme takes that weren't necessarily condoned by the church. So I wasn't super interested and didn't feel the need to take Mariology. However, by the time I got to my grad year, there were not many options for in-person grad classes, so I chose to take the course because it fit my schedule decently well. The course was actually cross-listed as an undergrad class, so turned out that the lecture was completely the same, and then the grad students would stay behind an extra 10 minutes to ask questions if desired. We got a slightly more robust reading list that was mostly optional, and then we had to write a paper at the end of the term on a topic from the class, and I think maybe some of our questions on the exams were a little bit different as well, but in terms of the content of the course and the lecture materials, the same as the undergrad course that everyone was always raving about, okay? So I was finally going to take it here in the fall of my grad year. Then, as we all know, or as I know, the summer between my graduation from undergrad, so I graduate in May, over the summer, I took one in-person class in June. And then there at the end of June, I started deconstructing, but my other classes were online. So it was very easy to separate what was going on in my personal life in terms of faith with my coursework. 2 or 3 times a week, I would log in, do the work, log off, and not have to worry about it. But now I was having to sit in class all day, 2 days a week. I had a nice schedule. It was just classes on Tuesdays, Thursdays, which freed up the rest of my week for work. It was honestly nice. It was a good schedule, but it meant that the classes, I was suffering in my classes, let me just say that. So I'd been coming off of an intense summer of deconstruction immediately after graduating with my bachelor's, okay, while in the midst of my Master of Arts in Theological Studies. And then I start this Mariology class. It's the headspace I was in heading into the class. Not only that, but we addressed Garabandal specifically toward the end of the semester, so by that point, I'd had even more time to struggle through all of this and gather what my thoughts were about it, and by that point, I was losing a lot of my patience for the religious and the supernatural, and the sort of the stuff I had always loved about Catholicism, the esoteric, the larger than life, the sort of niche Catholic grandma things, that stuff really appealed to me in a lot of ways, and I started to just see it as what it was. I saw it more as folklore and myths and culture. Not that those are issues. I just couldn't separate that or see that as unique from something else. And of course, Catholicism purports that it has the one true thing. So that was a problematic for me. I'm going to turn down my mic a little bit because I'm seeing that the mic is maybe going into yellow. Maybe that will help. I'm trying to speak loudly because I have a tendency to mumble and speak quietly, but I can't tell what the audio actually sounds like. By the time we talked about Garabandal, that day in class really ruined me. I meant to mention this at the beginning, but I want to give a quick trigger warning for the demonic, violent, otherwise disturbing content that accompanies 20th century Marian apparitions. The apparitions of Garabandal took place in, of course, Garabandal in Spain. And it was there that St. Michael the Archangel, as well as Our Lady, appeared to 4 young girls, all between the ages of 11 and 12, Mari Cruz, Jacinta, Mari Loli, and Conchita, with Conchita frequently being referred to as the primary visionary for her influence in reporting on their apparitions. So she's remained the big visionary who's more, I don't know, who's a spokesperson for them. Let me say that. Starting on June 18th, 1961, St. Michael the Archangel began to appear to the 4 girls. After a few visits, he told them, and this was on July 1st, he asked, "Do you know why I had come? To announce to you that tomorrow, Sunday, the Virgin Mary will appear as Our Lady of Mount Carmel." Of course, the girls are expecting Mary and Our Lady of Mount Carmel to appear to them. Garabandal, as a town, has a lot of stones around, jagged rocks, if you're familiar with Medjugorje. To me, it sounds very similar. Again, I haven't been to Medj nor to Garabandal. I've just heard both of these things. Lots of hilly stuff with these little rocks all over the ground. And that's also the case in Garabandal. And there is also a clearing with 9 pine trees, which is significant to the narrative. So sure enough, on July 2nd, the girls showed back up to the pine tree clearing, followed by a great multitude of people, quote unquote, which included priests and doctors. So at some point between June 18th and July 2nd, people were hearing about the girls who were having St. Michael appear to them. And there was a lot of people following them. Now, again, Garabandal is said to have had 300 people at the time. This just says a great multitude at the source I was reading from. So maybe it was 100 people, maybe it was more, maybe people were traveling from another town. I don't know. So I won't make conjectures at this point about what was going on. But there were priests and doctors and many others who accompanied them. And sure enough, Mary appeared, flanked by St. Michael and a second unknown angel on the other side. Here's how they described her. She comes with a white dress, blue mantle, a crown with 12 golden stars, her hands stretched out, with a brown scapular, carrying the child in her arms. Her hair was brown and long, parted in the middle. Her face was long, with a fine nose. Her mouth was very beautiful, with lips a little thick. She appeared to be 17 years old and tall. Mary appeared to the girls several times and shared several messages with them over the course of what seems to be about 4 years. There are 2 accepted messages, verbatim quotes from Our Lady, that are thrown around when you're reading about Garabandal. So the apparitions occurred from June 18th, 1961 to June 18th, 1965. Again, June 18th, 1961 is the original date St. Michael appeared to them. Here's the first message, which was given by Our Lady to the girls on July 4th, 1961. So 2 days after the first time Mary appeared to them, she appeared again and gave this message. This had already been written on a sign at St. Michael the Archangel's feet in the month of June during the apparitions of the angel to the girls. So they'd already seen this on a sign written down on the ground. But then Mary speaks it out loud to the girls. And she asked the girls not to make this message public until October 18th. So they first saw it in June, but June to October, July to October, it was about 3.5 months after the pact. They did as Our Lady requested, and in October of 1961, the Visionaries made known to the world the first message, which said, quote, "Much sacrifice needs to be done, and much penance. We have to visit the Blessed Sacrament much, but before, we have to be very good. If we do not do this, a punishment will come. The cup is being filled, and if we don't change, a punishment will come." Unquote. So I just like to say, I don't quite understand the wording of this, if this was a verbatim from Our Lady, or if this is actually just the girls paraphrasing what they heard and turning it into the first person since they're the ones recounting it. Basically, it's a message that the faithful needs to sacrifice, do penance, visit the Blessed Sacrament, be very good. Otherwise, a punishment will come. The cup is being filled, so the cup is a reference to scripture, the cup of fire and brimstone, the cup of the foaming cup in the prophets or in Revelation or something that is drunk, signifying punishment. I'm sorry, I did not look it up in advance to say what that was, so my bad. I'm embarrassing myself. So Mary says this at the beginning of her apparitions to the girls. She communicated a second message 4 years later towards the end of the apparitions. According to this source, which I guess I'll tell you what my source is, piercedhearts.org. I'm going to quote it or link it, obviously, down below. Okay, here's the second message, which was given by Our Lady to Conchita, like I said, primary visionary and spokesperson. She said to Conchita on January 1st, 1965, that the Archangel Michael would appear on the 18th of June and give a message in her name to the whole world. Through the mediation of St. Michael 5 months later, Our Lady complained that the first message was not listened to and warned the world that this would be the last. Quote, "Because it was not fulfilled, and my message from October 18th, 1961 has not been made known to the world, I tell you, this is the last one." Now remember, they had Mary tell them this on July 4th, 1961, but they were not to reveal it until October 18th. So they did reveal it on October 18th, and she says, "It was not fulfilled, and my message from October 18th has not been made known to the world. I tell you, this is the last one." Before the cup was being filled, but now it is overflowing. Many priests are walking through the path of perdition and taking with them many souls. Less and less importance is given to the Eucharist. You should prevent God's anger upon you with your efforts. If you ask forgiveness with sincerity, he will forgive you. I, your mother, through the intercession of the Archangel Michael, want to tell you to amend your lives. You are in the last warning. I love you very much and don't want your condemnation. Ask and you will receive. You should do more sacrifice. Think more in the passion of Jesus. So, she told them 4 years ago to do penance, for the cup is being filled. And unfortunately, they did not do enough penance, and the cup is now overflowing, and she cannot hold God's wrath back any longer. She doesn't want to see this happen because she loves them as her mother, but she cannot restrain God's justice and ire from the world. That's cheery. I remember hearing this in class and sitting back and hearing the professors speak about Mary loves her children, that she's so loving and merciful that she wants to do everything she can. And God is both perfect mercy and perfect justice, so he can't help it. And Mary is encouraging them to pray and fast and pray for conversions and for people to convert. We cannot stop God's ire, but we might be able to mitigate it. Rather than 1 million people die, maybe only 500,000 people will die. Maybe we can save a few lives by reducing the impact or something by our prayers, petitions, and fasting. Which is very interesting to me. Abraham bargained with God for the life of the people in Sodom and Gomorrah. You will not, if there's even one person, or was it Lot who did that? It wasn't Abraham? I'm pretty sure it was Sodom and Gomorrah, though, unless I'm mixing up. Whatever. Just as an aside, I did start prepping a script for this, but then I got to about this point and I knew that if I worked on the script, then I wouldn't have it in me to record the video. I can only subject myself to too much of it. So I'm thinking of all these like different connections scripturally that are not coming out properly because it's been a while since I've engaged with scripture on a regular enough basis to rattle it off the same. So that really is a different feeling for me when I'm trying to make my scripture reference and I can't actually, anyway, gather myself. I feel like I'm doing really well for where I'm at right now. If you know me, you've probably heard me speak about this before and know how worked up I get. So I've been nervous to talk about it because eventually I'll just start yelling and crying. So I'm gonna gather myself here. I remember sitting in this class and just being so confused. I thought God loved us. I grew up with Divine Mercy and with the Divine Mercy devotion. And so I don't see the Lord as full of this wrathful, righteous anger that will spill out over the world to take millions of lives that we can try to mitigate by begging for his forgiveness and by ourselves inflicting suffering and penance upon ourselves. That's not the way I was seeing it. So it was very disturbing to me to hear actually that God was angry and wrathful and Mary was just trying to whatever. And I think the professor did try to address that sort of discrepancy of how weird it is to think of God in that way and think of Mary as trying to hold back God for us. Because doesn't she act in perfect accord with his will? And that's, of course, why she ends up stepping aside and she isn't able to prevent him from still spilling out his wrath upon the world. I don't really know. I don't know how somewhere in here this talk of God's anger turns into a million deaths, but I do recall that being a thing, okay? Like, I do recall specifically talks about a million deaths. That's interesting. That's interesting. Let me pull up my class notes now. So those are the two messages. So already here, I'm a little concerned, I don't know, by the doom and gloom of this. Now, throughout the course of this course, I discovered that Fatima actually has a lot of similar apocalyptic suffering, fire and brimstone type of language that I just hadn't paid attention to previously when it came to Fatima. So this message is in alignment with some of what was said at Fatima. I wish that I had some quotes to pull up to give you that, but I simply have to keep going or else this video will be completely derailed. But I can go into that at another time. So the messages themselves are just pretty basic. Like I said, there's only these two that we have quote unquote verbatim from Our Lady. Now I'm going to speak about the supernatural elements of Garabandal. Dr. Mirabali makes the claim that there is no middle course when it comes to Garabandal. It can only be from heaven or hell. So you can't claim, oh, maybe the girls were having some sort of hallucination. Maybe they were lying. Maybe this, maybe that is impossible because of this observed supernatural phenomena involved at Garabandal. The girls would walk in unison and have what are referred to as ecstatic marches, where they would be walking throughout the town over, again, the rocks and the hills covered in jagged rocks. They would walk backwards with their head straight up, looking at the sky, watching Our Lady. With their hand up, holding a cross, they would kiss it and hold it up to Our Lady, and then hold the cross up to whoever was nearby and have them kiss it. They were very coordinated and very much in unison. Here's a quote from ImmaculateMother.org, and I'm just going to go ahead and read this. So all credit to ImmaculateMother.org and the writers there. Hundreds of documented cases of the suspension of the laws of nature. If the events were an elaborate hoax, or if the girls were the victims of some form of hallucination or self-delusion, We would not expect their behavior during the trances to transgress the laws of nature, but this, in fact, is what was happening on a constant basis. During the apparitions, the visionaries invariably fell into a state of ecstatic trance. They would crash to their knees in unison, with their heads angled steeply upwards, bless themselves, and begin conversing with the heavenly visitor. The fall to the ground invariably happened on rugged stone surfaces without any harm resulting to the knees of the visionaries. During some of the visions, medical doctors and others shone bright lights into the eyes of the children and pricked their skin with needles. The children showed themselves completely impervious to light or to pain. On certain occasions, the children were filmed in their ecstasies by professional camera crews, including the Italian state channel RAI. The lights trained on the girls' eyes were extremely powerful and normally could not be borne at that range without suffering permanent damage. Can I just say, as an aside, that's very reckless of them to potentially ruin young girls' eyeballs for the sake of proving the miracle. However, the girls did not blink, grimace, or close their eyes at any point while they were still in ecstasy, but as soon as the trances ended, they were immediately dazzled and shielded their eyes. On hundreds of occasions, the girls engaged in ecstatic walks, either individually or as a group. They would move through the village in unison, sometimes at great speed, their arms linked and their heads constantly angled upwards, fixed on the vision. Even though their gaze was directed heavenwards, they would still negotiate the narrow alleyways, steep paths, and rocky terrain faultlessly. On no occasion did the girls stumble or fall during these ecstatic walks. The swiftness and agility with which they moved was astonishing. Sometimes they walked backwards, up and down precipitous, rocky paths with absolutely no possibility of being able to see where they were going. Nearly always they were pursued by crowds of onlookers who struggled to keep pace. The fastest and most athletic boys of the village were unable to keep up with them. On various documented occasions, onlookers tried to lift the girls while they were in ecstasy. Their bodies were found to have taken on enormous weights, making it almost impossible for adults to move them. However, the girls themselves had no difficulty lifting each other during the ecstasies. It became customary for the girls to salute Our Lady with a kiss at the end of an apparition. They would raise each other up to a height of 3 or 4 feet in order to accomplish this kiss. Some photos show one or other of the girls lifting another up to Our Lady with apparently the greatest of ease. This was despite the fact that fully grown men found it almost impossible to move the visionaries during the trances. With all this in mind, you would think there has to be something supernatural going on, right? This cannot be explained by regular means. This doesn't make sense. Why would they suddenly be so heavy? And yet, why are they able to lift one another? Why are they able to walk in unison, head straight up, backwards over rocky hills? That doesn't sound real. It must be either Mary herself or the devil tricking us. It could have been a trick of the devil, but it had to have been Mary or demons. So now picture me, Veronica, a girl who has loved the church her whole life and used to love stuff like this, being told this miracle is definitive, like it has to be. It is clearly supernatural. It has to be angelic or demonic. It has to be Marian or satanic. And sitting back and thinking, wow, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the proof, the real proof that this is real. That maybe this is it. This is the proof that it's real. But it's also creepy. It's that like really exciting, creepy, like supernatural side to apparitions that we love. The secrets at Fatima, the tales of future world wars and how depraved the world is and how there's spiritual warfare. Stories about exorcisms that make your skin crawl but also sound like cool because how could this be real? I don't know if maybe this is a unique experience, or maybe you think I'm crazy or mentally unwell because that's thrilling, but I think it's similar to why people love like a horror movie or a thriller. It's the adrenaline rush of danger. And this is like a real life horror movie kind of thing. It's why I have a hard time sometimes with horror movies. If there's anything supernatural going on, it's the demons are real, and so this could be real, and there could be demons in my house. The likelihood of someone having broken into my house is very small, but the likelihood of demons being in my house is pretty high, all things considered. there's probably a demon here. And that kind of puts you on edge a little bit. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe that was all crazy. Let me move on. So we've gone over the messages and we've gone over the spiritual side. Hopefully, if there's not a video clip in the podcast directly, I'll find a couple that I like and put them in the description so you can watch if you're interested. The one, I did some personal research. We didn't watch any videos or anything in class, but I looked them up on my own and found this one particular site with a video of the girls kneeling together. Again, they would kneel in unison. Knees hit the rocky ground. No marks on their knees afterwards. No injuries. They would fall to their knees in unison. And they would have these ecstatic dances that were supernatural because they would be kneeling and then they would lean forward until their noses were almost touching the ground in front of them. And then they would lean back and rock back all the way until they were almost on their back. Imagine someone who can do the cha-cha slide. How low can you go? And they can actually go really low, and they are really good at crouching down and then laying flat on the ground and then being able to carefully pull themselves back up again. They were doing that at the ages of 11 and 12, but in perfect synchronicity. Watching the video was actually very eerie when I did watch it, and I wondered why we didn't watch it in class because it's very creepy in a lot of ways. I don't know. But at the same time, it's thrilling. What if this is real? This has to be real. How were 11-year-old girls making this up in the 60s, in a tiny town that didn't have a lot of access to radio or TV or anything like that? I don't know. And now we have finally set the stage to move on to the kicker, the big point of it all. The great Garabandal thing. What a crime. There's 3 or 4 aspects to this. I think it's 3 aspects with the fourth one, you can 2 of them are combined. Sorry. First, we have the warning. The warning is a report that God will grant worldwide a contemporaneous illumination of conscience for every human being at the same time. An external event will occur immediately after which we will see the state of our soul in life. By the way, I'm reading from my class notes and my study notes, okay? So this is my words from the time. So a contemporaneous illumination of conscience. So something will happen externally, whether that's a giant flash in the sky seen all around the world at the same time, whether it's something else, there will be some sort of external event immediately after which every single person simultaneously will see the state of our soul and life. So every single person in the whole entire world will be struck as if by lightning with the knowledge and understanding that they are going to hell. Or they're doing okay and they're going to go to heaven. Including people who are not religious, including people who are not Christian, including people who do not believe in God or the Christian concept of heaven and hell. They will realize, oh my gosh, God is real and I have offended him, therefore I am going to hell. All simultaneously. Of course, to be practical, the Lord plans on stopping everything in a standstill. Trains, planes, cars, all will stop for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, whatever amount of time is appropriate to allow people to have this moment internally. Oh my gosh, I have been rejecting and abandoning God and I'm going to die. But of course, we're going to stop all the cars because otherwise, you would panic and freak out and everyone would get in a car accident and die immediately. And that's not the point of this. The point is simply an illumination of the conscience, okay? Not apocalyptic at all. These events, my professor was very adamant, these events are not indicative of the end times. This is specifically not an end times thing. This is extra mercy from God to allow us time to convert to him or to return to him. This could happen, and then end times might not come for another 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years or more. Who knows? So that's important to highlight. Even though a lot of this sounds pre-apocalyptic, sounds similar to the 3 days of darkness, sounds similar to all sorts of things that I will touch on a little bit more later. I just wanted to clear that part up now. Jacinta, the Garabandal visionary Jacinta, said, "Prepare for, but do not fear the warning through frequent confession, leading to new gratitude for our heavenly parents, God the Father and Mary, our mother." Quote, "Personally believe it's going to happen." Oh, that would have been my professor said. Quote, "Personally believes that it's going to happen." Other saints have received similar messages, like Blessed Anna Maria something. I didn't get her full name. I'm sorry about that. That a box we bring into our house, and that there will be a box that we bring into our house, and from this box, demons will jump out. We could close it, but they won't. Television, phones, etc. are now purported to be this box that we bring into our house, and from that, demons pop out. I'm not sure the significance of that, if that is also somehow linked to an illumination of conscience, or if it's linked to something similar that was proposed that does now seem to come about now. If you think about the amount of pornography that we get through our television and phones, the amount of apathy that we get today and sloth from sitting around on our phones and televisions. And then he also brought up St. Faustina as some sort of similarity here, which might just have to do with the mercy thing. Conchita has stated that some will die from the warning, like abortionists. So, for example, the point is not death, which is why all the cars will stop. God will stop the cars as well to prevent us all from dying. But some people will have far too great a shock looking at their sins, and they will just die on the spot from like a cardiac event caused by sudden stress or something. They'll just fall down dead. An abortionist will be faced with the fact that they have slaughtered entire cities worth of real people, and they won't be able to live with themselves literally, and they shall pass away on the spot. But that's not the point. The point is for conversion. So for those who can convert, they will convert from this, hopefully. Now, there's something important to note as well, which is that the warning aspect of this has been associated with some sketchy publications, including The Warning, which mixes truth with false apparitions. So there's truthful apparitions, and then there's false apparitions. There's people who believe in a truthful apocalyptic claim or prophecy, such as that of Garabandal, along with unconfirmed false prophecies. Okay, so the criteria by which you determine which is which before they've come true, I'm not sure, because it's always proved once it happens. You can't really prove a prophecy is true in advance, but that's what my note says. For example, the warning will combine information. The publication, The Warning, will combine information about the Garabandal warning with other things, such as the 3 days of darkness, such as putting a timestamp on it, saying, oh, you have 6 weeks, and you'll have to break your phone and your computer, and make sure you're taken care of supernaturally, and get away from the chaos to be saved. Those are absurd claims that have no basis in Garabandal. However, Garabandal's association with sketchy publications like The Warning does not affect the legitimacy of Garabandal itself. It should be considered independently of the ways people have gone on to use the apparition and the prophetic purported future events related at Garabandal. So, to sum up, first we have the warning. Next is the miracle. The miracle will happen anytime within 12 months of the warning. Okay, so in advance, we'll know the miracle will happen because the warning has to happen first, okay? Anywhere within 12 months. The miracle is associated with the promise that those at the apparition site of Garabandal will be healed physically and spiritually. So you better bet that as soon as the miracle happens, or as soon as the warning happens, and the illumination of conscience happens, which again is a warning of potential perdition, and therefore you should convert, and therefore you should consider getting yourself to Garabandal for the miracle so that you can be healed physically and spiritually. Those there will be healed physically and spiritually. A miracle will occur in Garabandal at the apparition site at the 9 Pines in the clearing. Remember I mentioned that earlier. The miracle will be a miraculous sign, a permanent, visible sign that can be seen but not touched. This is that fourth thing. The miracle and the sign to me are the same thing. I have a hard time distinguishing what the difference is. I think the miracle might be the physical and spiritual healing of all present at the time, but it's also accompanied by a sign. It will be a permanent, visible sign that can be seen but not touched. So here are some theories that above the pines of Garabandal, a cross will appear, or a picture of a cross will appear. You won't be able to touch it, but you'll be able to see it, and it will be there forever for the entire rest of the world. Floating in space. It's not... The tilma of Our Lady is on a cloth, a miraculous image on the cloth. The Shroud of Turin as well, but this is something that appears in nature. We're presuming, we guess that means in the sky above the pines. The Holy Father will see the sign as a special grace from wherever he is. So if you're familiar with the myth, I believe, about St. Clare of Assisi, St. Clare of Assisi is often called the patron saint of television because there was one time she was so ill she could not make it to the chapel for a particular mass. I think it was something like Christmas or Easter's, like sort of a big deal. And instead, mass appeared for her on the wall of her cell as if she was present at the mass. Similarly to that, the Pope does not have to go to Garabandal in order to witness the sign. It will happen for him wherever he happens to be in the world. So I'm sure you're probably thinking, okay, so we don't have to worry about the miracle and the sign right now because we'll have a 12-month warning to book it to Garabandal to be there. Maybe it'll only be a day, but maybe it'll be a whole year. There'll be some amount of time for us to fly to Garabandal. Something I was immediately really interested in was to see how jacked up the flight prices would get and how full it would be of everyone flocking to Garabandal after the warning. And looking back on that now, it makes me laugh because that would imply the warning would have to actually happen for us to be like buying up the flights after. But I was sitting there thinking I should start my Garabandal fund so I have a couple $1,000s to buy a last-minute flight to Spain. Which isn't a bad idea, honestly, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If this were to happen, guys, if the warning happens, like, I gotta be there, you know what I mean? You can't just pass that up. Like, this is great. Petition that Leave, Laugh, Love and our other content creator friends show up at a camera crew to cover Garabandal from the gay ex-Catholic perspective. Guys, you wouldn't believe how many people are here. Look at the pines. Wow, it's the rocks. Yes, it was all real. Just like they said, but literally nothing is even happening. We're all just standing here. Anyway, sorry. It could be pretty epic. You're probably thinking 12 months is still a long time. I can't just quit my job for that. Again, this isn't the end of the world. So at the end of the day, I'm going to have to go back to where I live, going to go back to my house. I'm just have to camp out there for up to a year after the warning if I want to be present for the miracle. No, don't worry. There are hints of the dates available today. And Conchita knows the date now already. Primary visionary Conchita already knows the date of the miracle. She is to let the world know 8 days ahead of time. Okay? So don't worry, guys. Conchita knows the day of the miracle, and she will tell us 8 days ahead of time before the miracle. So here's the timeline, guys. We're going to have the warning and the illumination of conscience. And then sometime within a year, sometime within 51 weeks, we're going to get a message from Conchita. It's happening now, 8 days from today. And then, presumably within those 8 days, we're all going to be booking it to Spain to be present for the miracle and the sign. One of my friends was actually just telling me today that some of their family members actually visited Garabandal back in the 70s or 80s, which iconic, and even met the Visionaries, or one of them. Iconic. I want to know which one. Was it Mama Conchita? Please, mother. But I was really laughing hearing this story because they were saying, oh, she was young at the time, and this older lady who was very devout brought her with her because she needed people to help push the disabled in wheelchairs up the mountain to be prepared for the miracle. And I said, why were they doing that? The warning hadn't even happened. Bestie boo, Conchita's gonna give us an 8-day heads up, and at the very least, we can just wait for the warning, and as soon as the warning happens, then you can go. Why would you just sit there for who knows how long on end? And at this point, it's been 40, 50 years. That was that lady's decision. My decision is to sit and wait for the warning before I make any determinations or definitive statements about what did or did not happen at Garabandal and the veracity or lack thereof of Garabandal. But guys, I'm not done. Sorry, I'm not done. We have the warning, we have the miracle and the sign, and then we have the chastisement, which will come after. So the warning is to prepare us, right? You are going to hell. You have to convert. Oh my gosh, you're right. What do I do? I am still a broken man. I still sin every day. Don't worry. Book it to Garabandal. You don't even have to go right this second. Conchita will give you an 8-day heads up. As soon as she says go, you go to Garabandal. Everyone present will be healed physically and spiritually. So whatever is keeping you from the Lord, whatever is keeping you from following his will and his words for your life will be healed. You'll be able to follow him. You'll be able to be holy and a saint. All of that will be stripped away. That's a huge promise, guys. Me losing my faith, me losing my ability to engage authentically or sincerely with my faith, with my entire personality, with the God of my youth. Hearing that, it felt like a saving grace and a death threat, and both a gift, both a blessing and a curse. Oh my gosh. Then I will know for sure. If Garabandal happens, if the warning and the miracle happens, then I will know for sure that God is real. I will know for sure that the Catholic God is real, and I need to follow the Catholic Church and follow those practices and let everything else go and let go of my doubts and my new values and just follow the church. But what a curse that is as well. I've been sitting through months of this class at this point where I've heard about Mary appearing to these people in impoverished communities simply to say you need to convert so that people don't go to hell. People who probably could have used some food or medicine or medical care, like somebody who could have been set free from the oligarchs who inevitably always rule society. Like, she shows up and says, you need to sacrifice and honor me more. You need to call me the mediatrix of all grace and dedicate the world to me, dedicate Russia to me, and then Russia will stop terrorizing everyone. I'm sorry, what? Couldn't you just intervene and make those steps already? No, you have to invite Mary in you have to invite her. She's like a perfect gentleman. Jesus is a gentleman and Mary is demure or whatever. And she won't impose where she is not wanted. So you have to invite her in, which is why it's important. Okay, if you say so, but you're just gonna sit by and watch us kill each other until the right number of people ask you to step in? Until enough of us consecrate ourselves to you as your slaves forever because we are mere worms? Anyway, the chastisement, the fourth and final aspect of the Garabandal prophecies, is a vision of hell. And unfortunately, I missed the final bit, but it was something like a dogma. And I'm not sure if that is referring to the fifth Marian dogma, which is a proposed dogma that we would elevate to the level of dogma, the doctrine that Mary is the advocate and mediatrix of all graces, the co-redemptrix, advocate and mediatrix of all graces, which the church does teach and believe. It's orthodox to think that, but it has not been elevated to a dogma. That's considered a bit controversial simply because it requires a lot of explanation to make sure that you're teaching about it properly, that you're not putting her as higher than Jesus or even necessarily equal to Jesus. Mary wasn't necessary for salvation per se, but Jesus chose to make her necessary for salvation. There's some beautiful theology behind it, honestly, but anyway, it's controversial. But a lot of these 20th century Marian apparitions seem to have this bent towards you need to recognize the fifth Marian dogma in order to save the world from impending doom, which to me sounds made up by people who are a fan of the fifth Marian dogma. You gotta say it. It'd be really convenient for them if that is really what Mary is saying to all of these peasant girls throughout Europe. Unfortunately, I do not have. I think I was probably dissociating, honestly, by the time we got done talking about the warning, the miracle, and the sign, and then him talking about a vision of hell. Is everyone getting the vision of hell? So we start with a vision of our sins. We start with a sign in the sky at Garabandal, and then a vision of hell? I don't know. I think I blacked out. But if this is who God is, I don't want to follow him. I realize if this is just the same as the crazy apocalyptic shit I was watching documentaries about. So Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey came out that summer, and Evelyn and I watched it with our friend Sophia, who was on our Hard as Nails episode. Shout out Sophia. We watched Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey. We were like picking elderberries off the stems and just engrossed and thinking, so this is similar to us. But it was like a little bit niche. That's really extreme, but I can see why people think that way and why people stay in a system like that, because I think the same thing. I think that God has ordained this church as the one true church and the way to live, to be his people, his bride, and I have to be holy, so I have to obey. Seeing that in Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, now I'm seeing it married to this context of supernatural, really extreme, crazy claims, you know what I mean? And that was really hard to witness. It was like my brain was breaking as I saw Catholicism from this new perspective to see this is so similar to other things. And people say that Catholicism has unique miracle claims that prove Catholicism is true. And I've been saying this for years now, and I really do want to do this. I just have not had the emotional and mental bandwidth and time to really engage in this. But a question in my mind is, are there other supernatural claims in other traditions? The answer there is yes. What are those claims? The details of those claims? Are they similar to Catholicism? In what ways are they different? Can that be traced back to distinctions in like church teaching? So Catholicism's teaching and practices are such that we have plenty of people thinking they're seeing the Blessed Mother. Are there people in the Islamic tradition who believe they're seeing Allah, who believe they're seeing Muhammad, who believe they're seeing other significant figures in Islam? I don't like, those are the kind of questions that I really want to engage in and figure out more about, because I know that would really help me. And even today, discussing with friends and things like that, the supernatural phenomena of the church still gets brought up. Stuff like the Shroud of Turin, stuff like Fatima is still brought up to say, what about the miracle of the sun? What about that? What about the imagery on the Shroud of Turin? What about that? And I just want to say, there's got to be phenomena like that elsewhere. And apparitions are a huge part of that. Not to say, of course, there are ghost sightings and stuff like that, sort of in the regular secular tradition. or in more, sometimes they're involved in pagan or witchy traditions as well. So in some way that could be considered religious and from a spiritual practice as well. But I specifically, that is something that I want to look into, because I don't think that's convincing just because somebody was really convinced they saw Mary in a really convincing way, that everything that Mary said must be true. But if this is what he chose to do, and if you think about it, like going back to the FLDS and the Keep Sweet Pray and Obey, Warren Jeffs and even Rulon Jeffs both were claiming God. They were both claiming that they were the mouthpiece of God. They were the prophet. And especially Warren starts going on and on about these like end times and apocalyptic stuff, and how there was going to be some great awful event that would ruin everything and you had to get to Zion. And he started building Zion in Texas, like a separate compound where he would put the really malleable people who, if you were any at all rebellious, would be kicked out, and all the really good malleable people were sent down to Texas. I think I would have made it to Texas, gotta be honest. I belong to Zion, guys. Sorry, that's offensive in some way. But so I'm seeing these like correlations between these like crazy apocalyptic claims, and my heart is sinking and thinking, that's not unique to Catholicism, first of all. These are just cult control tactics. Literally, the FLDS said the same stuff, and I don't want to fall prey to living in a world like the FLDS because I'm just blindly believing what I'm told that this is reliable. Truly crushing. So then realizing, oh my God, if this happens, I will have to believe in God. And if it does happen, then it proves all this other stuff that I don't want to believe in. I don't want to believe in a God who shames people who've had an abortion. I don't want to believe in a God who is mad at you and sends you to hell because you're gay, which you can't help. And I wasn't a fan of that. I didn't want Catholicism to be true. And then that shifted something for me of thinking, oh my God, like, this is my opportunity. If this comes true, I will know Catholicism is true. Done. But I would really hate it if it came true. There's the part of me that's, oh my God, I can't believe this is really happening, and I'm in the know, and this is a real thing, and I'm getting chills, and like, I finally have this like confirmation, and what an exciting time to be alive. There would be that side of it, 100%. But it would be awful. And not only because of the humility, the humbling nature of finding out I was wrong and I was so adamant about something that isn't true. I was already going through that with being so adamant about the faith, and then realizing that I didn't buy into that anymore. I can admit that I was wrong. That would suck. Okay, that would suck. But it would be easy in some ways and nice to just slip back into it and be like, I'm so grateful that the Lord brought me back and that he gave me that experience so that I could be empathetic and understanding towards other people. And now I can help them return to the church because I get it. But now there was a part of me that didn't really like God anymore. And the experience of learning about Garabandal in class and sort of thinking through that allowed me to access that part of me and that emotional reaction while I'm sitting there in class, mind you, trying not to break down in front of everyone else. And just realizing, God, I don't want this to be true. I don't want this to be true. When it comes to the Catholic Church's stance on the authenticity of Garabandal, Padre Pio is somebody who was a fan of Garabandal. He was living at the time that the visions took place, and he made some statements and sent some letters to the Visionaries expressing his support. His approval is a probable confirmation, for how could a stigmatist with such keen insight into spiritual warfare, who's constantly wrestling with the devil, how could he have gotten it so wrong for so long? Garabandal is probably true. It should be something you have fear about. This apparition, it is a little bit scary. However, we cannot promulgate Garabandal for the purposes of devotion. We can talk about it like the Our Lady of Nations, which maybe I'll talk about another time. If you guys like this, let me know. because that's a whole other topic that I won't get into. But you can talk about it for the informational purposes and study purposes, but you cannot promote devotion to Garabandal. It is not approved by the church. However, there is no full statement from the local bishop at this time. So the local bishop, then to now, has never made any statement on Garabandal. The only thing he has done is made a off-the-cuff comment to a journalist as he was walking into a sports bar, or maybe he was inside the sports bar. And unfortunately, I don't have that written down in front of me right now, what that statement was. I think it was, actually, I won't even say at all whether it was positive or not positive, because I don't have it in front of me and I don't want to get it wrong. And I'm on a roll and I don't want to interrupt that. I'll put it in the show notes. Apparently, Padre Pio received a locution from Mary for the Garabandal Visionaries that he shared with them via letter. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to the text of that. If you find it, let me know. Here are a few further notes about Garabandal. You can't use end-time speculation to cause you to stop living or becoming a busybody. You must always live well. So you can't get caught up in Garabandal might happen one day, so we should just stop living now. No, you still need to live your daily life. We will be put through sanctification. Mary talks always about a great purification, which will lead to a new era, not the end of the world. Most apparitions follow Fatima in that way, where she talks about the need for a great purification, a great conversion that will bring an era of peace and prosperity, not the end of the world. It does remind me, though, of in the book of Revelation, there is something about the rapture and then 1,000 years of peace, or maybe not the rapture yet, maybe some huge war thing, and then 1,000 years of peace before the end of the world happens. Some part of me sometimes wonders if that's correlated. But Satan will rear his ugly head once again at the end of the world. So Mary is doing all she can to help us prior to that, but Satan will still rear his ugly head at the end of the world. Of course, one of the first questions brought up in class when the floor was open for questions is the 3 days of darkness related to Garabandal? Girl, the 3 days of darkness is this whole other thing that I could probably make a whole video about, again, if people are interested. But a quick summary is that in this one, okay, let me be clear that Garabandal, the warning, the miracle of the sign, and the chastisement are all those are like unique to Garabandal. The 3 days of darkness is alluded to and seen in a few different mystical traditions over the course of several centuries. And it is often, 3 days is often used in scripture for significance. It's present in some sound visionaries that are generally trustworthy. Unfortunately, I don't have that written down, just that supposedly it is. But at the same time, the 3 days of darkness has been hijacked by stuff in the Watcher publication that I mentioned earlier, with false timetables that heaven never gives. So heaven has never really revealed when the 3 days of darkness are. My understanding and my memory is that Dr. Miravalli said there's nothing that would keep the 3 days of darkness being tied to the illumination of conscience or the miracle or the chastisement in some way. There isn't anything official about that, and we don't have any indication of when the 3 days of darkness will be, so we just don't know. But at the same time, they are related in the same spiritual vein of some big warning will happen to purify the world and lead to conversion and weed out the chaff. Take that as you will. Let me also say this. Conchita was 12 when the visions began in 1961, which would have made her 16 when the visions ended in 1965. Let me tell you where she is now. She would be 76 years old, having been born on February 7th, 1949. She married a man named Patrick Kina in 1973 and moved to the United States. They live in New York City with their 4 children, but they also maintain a house in Fatima, Portugal. Conchita has been given the date of the miracle. Let me give you the details about the date of the miracle, actually. Garabandal, the miracle, date. Okay, garabandal.org. A miracle is to occur in Garabandal within 12 months after the warning. It will be on a Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on a feast day of a martyred saint for the Eucharist, not a feast day of Our Lady or our Lord, a martyred saint for the Eucharist. It will happen in the month of April. Oh, I thought it was between the months of March and May. This says it will happen in the month of April between the 7th and the 17th of the month, but not the 7th or the 17th. So between the 6th, the 8th and the 16th. It will be seen by looking up over the area of the pines and will be visible from the all surrounding mountainside, which will serve as a natural amphitheater for the miracle and the sign. Millions of people could easily fit around the mountain area, as pointed out by this website. Conchita knows the nature of the miracle as well as the exact date, and she will announce 8 days before it happens. The means of communicating the date to the world would be a miracle in itself. It will be able to be filmed, photographed, and televised. Third, a permanent sign will remain at Garabandal in memory of the miracle as visible proof of our Blessed Mother's love for all humanity. It will be a thing never before seen upon the earth. It can be photographed but not touched. This is on a subset of garabandal.org that says Garabandal Prophecies, the Miracle. I would like to also point something else out. We have 2 messages from Our Lady. I read them at the beginning, but to refresh everyone's memory. Much sacrifice needs to be done and much penance. We have to visit the Blessed Sacrament, but before, we have to be very good. If we do not do this, a punishment will come. The cup is being filled, and if we don't change, a punishment will come. Number 2, because it was not fulfilled and my message from October 18th, 1961 has not been made known to the world, I tell you this is the last one. Before, the cup was being filled, but now it is overflowing. Many priests, that's the chastisement, by the way. People might die, and there will be a vision of hell for all those people who didn't convert after the warning and after the miracle and after the sign. Many priests are walking through the path of perdition and taking with them many souls. It is better for a millstone to be thrown around their neck than thrown into the sea. Sorry, that was me adding in scripture. Less and less importance is given to the Eucharist. Oh my God, guys, what's really crazy is that the visions of Garabandal ended in 1965. Okay, Mary said this in 1965. Do you know what also happened in 1965? That's right, the Second Vatican Council. That's right, the Roman Missal and the Novus Ordo. And you know what's happened ever since then? Less and less of an emphasis on the Eucharist. We start to see the Eucharist decentralized in the church. He goes in a tabernacle, off in a side chapel, off the main church. You can't even see him. And who's centered instead? The pastor. The priest will just sit in the middle. What is up with that? The Eucharist is less and less important. Priests walk along the path of perdition and take with them many souls. There were 400,000 priests and 90,000 of them left during Vatican Council II. That's according to a website I was reading while prepping for this episode. You know what also happened? The church sex abuse scandal. So many of the priests were abusing children. You know what's happened because of the sex abuse scandal? Tons of people love the fucking church, as they fucking should, because the priests are abusing people, and the hierarchy, the higher up priests and cardinals and pope and bishops and everybody just kind of shuffle all the priests around, and they don't do anything about it. Can still, to this day, nothing happens. I've been doing so well, guys. But it is interesting that Mary said this in 1965 in Vatican Council, of course. And one of the sites I was reading actually also made the correlation. So I was clocking it before because I'm smart and I know these things. But the website also then went on to say that as well. So then I felt extra smart. I was like, okay, so I guess I'm not crazy. And they were saying this is actually so true because, of course, Garabandal would be tratty. Are we surprised? So these are the 2 messages of Our Lady, okay? I just wanted to highlight that part of it. Where did the prophecies come from? because they're not purported to be word for word from Our Lady. So it's just something Conchita talked about after the fact. Like, where did this come from? I don't know. It's become a huge feature of Garabandal, but it's not part of the two messages. I don't have dates for when they were revealed these things to her. And then 10 years later, she's 20 years old, moving to New York and marrying an American. And now she just lives in New York with her kids, which pop off good for her. But lady, you have ruined my whole life. You hold the power of my life in your hands. If you announce the miracle, girl, like I am going to Garabandal to be there. I have to know if this is real. And think about this, guys. Eh, she's 76, right? Is that what I said? They're all in their 70s, okay? Just really quickly, Mari Lowley in 1972 also moved to the United States. She lived there for 37 years in New Hampshire until her death in 2009. Jacinta became Jacinta Moynihan and is living in California, just north of LA. Evelyn, I am flying out to you and I'm going to find this girl and I'm going to go to her house. Also, I'm sorry. I promised, Jacinta, if you're listening to this, I promise I won't stalk you. And I'm also sorry if my episode actually has offended you. If anybody happens to be listening to this, actually, I didn't really consider that. Probably not. But the fact that they could be watching my stupid little video about them, sorry. Yeah, Mari Cruz lives in Spain, Avila, Spain, and is married with 4 children. Born in 75, 78, 81, and 85. Also, I'm sorry, I think I'm getting the dates. No, I am getting the dates, right? Okay, never mind. They had their kids young. Let me just say that. This kid was born in 75 and the thing was in 61. Okay, yeah, so she was in her 20s. Conchita later went on to the United States and married Patrick Kina in 1973. They live in New York City with their 4 children, but they also maintain a house in Fatima, Portugal. This woman lives in New York City. What's also really interesting to me about Garabandal, guys, is like people either die young or they enter a convent or both. Bernadette of Subaru enters a convent, dies young. Lucia, Jacinta, and is it Marto? No, sorry, Marto's their last name. Is it Francisco? Francisco and Jacinta Marto. And then Lucia. Those two, the first 2, died young. And then Lucia went on to become a religious sister. And she did die old. But she was in the convent. All 4 of these people lived a long time. As far as I can tell, 3 of them are still alive. They all married and moved to the United States of America. There is one girl who lives in Spain, okay? But that's just really random to me, personally, that you would, like, move to America and marry an American man and just go on to have kids. Which, I don't want to be one of those people and perpetuate that in the church because pop off, yes, we can have married saints. Yes, like, you can have Mary appear to you and go on to be a wife and mother. That's still great. That's still whatever in the church. But come on, I love how feminism in the Catholic Church is. Don't worry, you can get married and have kids and still be a saint. You can have 4 kids and all named after like saints and still be really holy. It's really interesting. I've come like such a long way from that. But it's weird to me. It makes me a little uncomfortable that they didn't end up dying young or entering the convent. It was like, is this legit? Where were the graces there? Which is awful of me because I know marriage is a legitimate vocation. I just found it very interesting. Maybe it just marks a new era in the church. Conveniently, it coincides with the church being more open to marriage and talking about the sanctity of marriage as a vocation. I don't know. It's just another one of those things that's like interesting to me about Garabandal. Here is something on Wikipedia that says skepticism. Skeptical investigator Joe Nickel has written that the alleged Garabandal miracles came from anecdotal reports, never performed under conditions controlled by competent experts in deception. So you need someone who's an expert in deception to like control the conditions and be like thinking, oh, they can't be doing this or this, so let me put all this stuff in place to prevent common ways that they could be making this up. According to Nickel, they have, quote, the earmarks of childish stunts and simple tricks. He also noted that on 3 occasions, Garabandal Visionaries retracted some statements they made about their experiences. So that's interesting. There's a bunch of videos online. There's a bunch of stuff on YouTube, so I'm gonna find some that I like and link them. This is interesting. I can't really get into this right now, but Wikipedia does have 3 different things by different bishops on Garabandal, like statements from them on Garabandal, which is weird to me because I thought that there was none. So I'm gonna put that in the show notes as well for you to look at if you want to. If you don't want to ever hear another word about Garabandal ever again, I'm sorry. I will be talking about it in the future more because it is a thing for me. It is a thing for me. Even at the time, I like told everyone about it and was like, hey, guys, what do you think about this? I remember I asked my dad, I asked some of my other like Catholic friends who, as far as I knew, were not deconstructing. I remember as soon as class was over, I drove my friend back to her dorm, and then I called Evelyn immediately and was like, you have to be awake. Please be awake. She was in Austria, and I was just like, I need to tell this cannot be real. Like, Catholicism is crazy, and this can't be real. But also, if it comes true, then like I know. And get this, if 76-year-old Conchita passes away, okay, she knows the date of the miracle, and she has been tasked with telling us 8 days in advance. According to her, she's been tasked with telling us 8 days in advance of the date of the miracle, okay? Which I feel like you could also figure out by yourself, considering they gave us an 8-day window that it could be, and that it's on the eve of a feast day of a saint, and it's a Thursday. It's supposed to be a Thursday, by the way, is what I thought. This is where the dogma stuff comes in, because there's something else in there that somehow suggests that maybe the church would be making a big statement coming up. So maybe the church will be declaring the 5th Marian dogma, and it will be the eve of that, or they will have just done the Marian dogma. So now there's like a new saint that's a martyr of the Eucharist or something. There was like some connection there that I don't have it written down, so I can't relay it properly, but there was some sort of connection there with the date of the miracle and somehow associating that with the 5th Marian dogma, just bring everything together. You can see why Dr. Mirabali really likes this, because there's a convergence of all the different things that he's like really interested in. I am watching the news every day. Not quite every day, but you know, when Conchita dies, people will know. I will make sure of it. The church might not want to reveal that she has passed away. The people who love Garabandal will make up excuses probably that she left the note in a sealed letter that we can open when the warning happens, not a day before. It will become a secret of the Vatican. Like the 3rd secret of Fatima, which was never revealed and never truly fulfilled, which is a conspiracy theory, which is not true. Different video, sorry. Actually, you can check out Kevin on Trodcast's video on Fatima and Our Lady of Carmel if you're interested. I was just watching his video, and like he was talking about Carl, and so I thought it was really interesting that she also appeared as Our Lady of Carmel here at Garabandal. She also appeared as Carmel at Fatima. Crazy. Anyway, there's a lot more I could say. It's already been like an hour and a half, so I'm just gonna leave it here for now. I just wanted to say one last thing, though, about the church and why this impacts me so much. Some people can and have said, the church hasn't said if it's true or not. The church hasn't approved it or not. So there's nothing saying that you do have to believe it or that it's even approved for belief as something that could be legitimate. And even if the church does approve it, the church does not require us to follow or believe anything from a private revelation. And remember, public revelation ended with the death of the last apostle in the 1st century. And so since then, there has been nothing new added to the doctrine or to the canon of faith or to the scripture, to the word of God, to the public revelation. It's just been developed and interpreted from the magisterium, from the church. So private revelation is never something you have to believe anyway. But can you imagine walking into a room full of Catholics and being like, I don't really believe in Fatima, though. Oh my God, let me sit you down and explain to you why it's actually so beautiful, why Mary ever. I'm sorry, you don't believe in Lourdes? What about all the miracles of the water baths at Lourdes, my guy? What about that? My understanding of private revelation up to this point had always been private revelation is like a bonus that is not necessary for preliminary belief in the Catholic Church. You have to believe the creed. You have to be able to sincerely make the baptismal promises, and that's good enough. The Lord will lead you along the path of salvation, right? You don't need to believe everything right off the bat. But of course, the closer you get to the Lord, the more, you know what I mean? The closer you get to Him, the more open you are to Him, the more you'll believe, the more you'll receive from Him. And if you get to that point and you're still rejecting something like Fatima, like maybe you're not quite open. Like if this actually happened, like the options are this either happened or people are believing something that didn't happen at all. But it's been approved for public belief. But when it comes down to fact, did this happen? Like the church makes a lot of claims about facts and makes a lot of truth claims. And I was unable as a Catholic to accept that. It's like either this happened or it didn't happen, and I believe it because it happened, or I don't believe it because it didn't happen. So really, there's not a whole lot of belief going on there at all. It just has to have happened or not. And I think that there could be something to be said for having faith and the difference of, I can have faith that this happened, but it's okay if you don't necessarily believe that it did because Fatima is very enriching to my personal life, but it's fine if it's not enriching to yours. You'll find other things in the church's tradition to have faith about. And I understood the whole sort of universality of the faith. Of course, you should believe everything, but you don't have to have a particular devotion to everything. So it's like, I didn't have a particular devotion to Fatima. I always heard about Fatima and learned about it, and I remember it was a big deal in 2017 when it was a year since Fatima. I went to a mass at this chapel near my house that I went to all the time. They had like a special mass that it was packed. It was the most people I'd ever seen there. And it was for the 100-year anniversary of the first apparition at Fatima. The feast of Our Lady of Fatima is May 13th, which was the day of the first apparition. The apparitions occurred on the 13th of each month from May to October. And anyway, May 13th, there was a mass there and everything. And I remember I heard more about it then for the first time and all this stuff. I read this book by this guy who calls himself a friend of Medjugorje, who is a certified cult leader from Georgia, who is besties with Maria, what's her name, of the Visionary of Medjugorje. He loves Fatima. He wrote this book called Big Q, Little Q, comparing QAnon to the third Fatima secret and saying something about how Trump was the fulfillment of Fatima, here to save America. And look up QAnon's words for yourself and really think about it. But if you don't use the internet, don't get the internet just to look up QAnon. Don't worry, you can get all the information from me that you need. Just listen to me. If you live in my community and you don't have computers because we outlaw computers because they're sinful, don't worry. I will go on the evil internet for you and give you the information you need. Anyway, I read the whole book, and at the end I was like, wow, this guy's a cult leader. And I threw away the book, which I really regret now. I really wish I had it because I would love to reread it and give a thing. But it's so niche, you can't find it on Thrift Book, so no way am I giving this man money to send me another copy of this book, which is really unfortunate. So if you happen to have any books by the friend of Medjugorje, actually, can you message me and mail them to me? I would be most eternally grateful. But the Garabandal stuff just like smacks of that too. Like I didn't realize how much Fatima was connected to like conspiracy theory type stuff within the church, because Fatima is so widely accepted. And like, man, just like Ithi and Garabandal, you can't even talk about it all to spread devotion. But it all is like this web where it's connected. And then it's like, oh, Fatima's legit. So like Garabandal's probably legit. And Padre Pium's legit. So Garabandal's probably legit. And this is legit. So Medj is legit. And you're just like going down this path. So it's okay. Like I believe Fatima is real, right? If the church is real, yeah, sure, Fatima is real. Why would I say Garabandal isn't real? And now I'm actually starting to see Fatima in a different light to be similar to this Garabandal stuff, which I really don't like. And because I saw it as this progression, and the fact it's like either this happened or it didn't, and the whole supernatural thing where it's like, there's not other explanations for this, so if this really happened, and there is tape of some of the like ecstasies, there's tape of that. Like, to me, I didn't want to separate that from my Catholicism and just ignore it. I was like, no, this is important. You can't just say that Catholicism isn't culty just because you're choosing to ignore the culty parts. Let me look at it head on. So all that being said, the day that Conchita dies, everyone will know. I will be sure of it. And I will be throwing a party. We can have a big meetup party. Y'all are all welcome. I'll give you 8 days notice and you can travel to me instead of Garabandal. We can have our own gathering in a clearing. I'll find some pine trees or something and throw some confetti in the sky. And we will celebrate our final freedom from Catholicism and from the grip that the mysticism and supernatural events has on us as post devout Catholics or post religious Catholics or post Catholic neurodivergent queer girlies or something. Yeah. But on that rousing note, be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok, Instagram and TikTok at Leave Off Love Pod to stay up to date, to make sure you get the update when Miss Conchita passes away. Also, don't worry, Conchita, it's not that I'm wishing for your death. I'm just curious. And I will be saying a prayer for your soul to make up for the fact that I will be so happy when you die. Maybe it made it worse that I just address her directly. This is getting awkward. I really need to wrap this up. It's like after 10 o'clock and whatever. Anyway, follow us to stay up to date. Give us a follow on Patreon as well. I released this early because I was so excited about it and I couldn't help it. But you could have also watched this early if you subscribed to our Patreon for limited time only. You can also subscribe at the free level to check out our other benefits and stuff. I've been working on like other content for the Patreon and trying to like start up a Discord thing or something where people can talk to each other and build maybe some community. And generally just your support for us means the world as we're trying to grow our platform and figure out how best to create this space for those of us who've been victimized by Garabandal. We're trying to provide a safe space for all the girlies who've been victimized by Our Lady of Garabandal. Yeah, I think that's all for now. Give us a review, leave a comment or something, and tell us what you thought and what you want to hear about in the future. If you liked this, I have plenty more where this came from, so let us know. Until next week, keep living, laughing, and loving. Bye!